Hello, it's me again. Sorry to disturb you. How's things? All okay? Yeah, jolly good. Well, my name's Nick, and I spend a lot of my time talking about all kinds of weird and wonderful sort of occulty type stuff and new agey type stuff on this channel, as some of you know, and some of you have seen me talking about this kind of stuff for a while, and some of you haven't. So either way, what I want to talk about now is like, putting it simply, intelligent theological conclusions as opposed to like difficult things, right? There's a lot of people who are involved in magic and occult and witchcraft are essentially of a spiritual type, and that is essentially necessary because a lot of the things that we call magic is essentially just a formalization of attempts at ESP, energy work and forms of mediumship, really. That's essentially all we're really talking about. And therefore it has to be understood in real context and with a certain level of clarity of thought and understanding. But we can't really simplify things too much. People like to try and do opening up. They do opening up using a lot of different concepts, right? Thinking about the stars, thinking about the planets, anything to shift the state of consciousness when in that appropriate meditative state, as well as doing like ascension and opening the crown of the head and the meditation and so on and so forth. All these things are kind of like useful, and they kind of like bring you into the right direction and help you to open up. But you know, to the most part, people are doing this with theology, right? And within the It Works crowd and within the Magic Works crowd, these are very strongly spiritual, theological people, which is good. And from the spiritual, theological understanding, I think there is something very healthy there. But there's also something very unhealthy. Now, if you think carefully about what Aleister Crowley said in one of somewhere in Magic and Theory and Practice, he said that even like the highest god or whatever could easily be just like a complete lying, cheating, stealing piece of rubbish, really, in his own language. So therefore that would imply he's trying to encourage you to be skeptical of what kind of experiences you get and what kind of theologies you get. So he said that to try and keep you safe and sane and thinking, rather than just reacting emotionally or superstitiously. There were different forms of theistic Wiccans I knew back in the day, and there was one family that was very, very good, and I loved them, and I still do. But there were still some theological aspects of their attitudes which was wrong. The sort of like the patriarch of the family, the old man, he said that if they had to do or wanted to do a ceremony to celebrate May Day, then the girl who was playing the maiden would have to be fresh, you know, still with her tambourine. Or, he said, under the age 16. But what was the rationale for that? This was not aesthetic. This was not just a question of telling a story to give people a sense of belonging as part of a spiritual path. No, it wasn't for contemplation. It wasn't for talking about growth and whether you are at the stage of your life, whether you are a mother, a maiden, or a crone, and how you analyze these things and so on and so forth. No, it was because, and this is what he said, you'll be treading on someone's toes if you don't. This phrase means that he was terrified that the goddess was going to curse him, that there was going to be some terrible karma against the family if they did this ceremony in a manner which he regarded as being wrong because of his spiritual experiences. And he therefore felt that there would have to be some very severe adherence to this stuff in case they basically got beaten up by the gods. I personally thought that this was a unhealthy attitude to take. So these were people proud of their faith, that's great, but also scared witless of something that I don't think that they should be. And I don't think it's also wise to communicate to other people that this is somehow a attitude, this superstitious fear and dread is somehow an attitude which should be perpetuated. I think that when we're going through the process of playing around with mediumship, spiritualism, and psychic experience, I think we need to have a certain level of skepticism of our own experiences in order to try and make sure we don't end up having unhealthy ideas and promoting those unhealthy ideas to other people. Because on many different levels, a lot of these spiritual ideas which are out there aren't necessarily actionable. I mean, during the time I decided to play with demo accounts of trading, it was a bit of a fantasy world. I was watching, was it Bloomberg or something? They'd always talk about, we're going to give you actionable information, which I'm sure if I was like someone who actually knew stuff about trading, I would be able to like take some variety of action. But I didn't. So what's the actionable information which is being given to you when someone is giving you a theology which is based upon fear and dread of things which might or might not have the effects that he's talking about? Is this actually a healthy attitude to take? No. And if you get young, impressionable people, or people who have emotional issues, or excessively, one way or another anxious, and they're exposed to that kind of expression, I think that is wrong. And I don't think that that's the way in which people should be communicating, and I certainly don't think it's the way in which people should be believing either. There's something deeply disturbing about the attitude of spreading fear and superstitious fear and dread. Okay. And on top of that, it seems that the theological attitude was being expressed much more than any attempt to scientifically break down magic into something which could be useful to people, and therefore actionable. Just something to think about today. Alright? Just something to think about today. How could you change and shift your processes of opening up and your concepts of higher powers in a manner which would be sane? And what kind of attitudes could you take to these things in a manner which would help you in terms of clarity of thought and sanity and moving yourself forward in life, as opposed to retarding you, holding you back, and putting you into superstitious fear and dread? Think it through.